The My Pathway for all your employment training and recruitment needs. Another Tasmania Talks podcast.
Okay, now the Helen Kapelos movie I just spoke about. A Life of Its Own, the truth about medical marijuana. It was an issue, as you probably gleaned by now, that I was involved in prior to arriving in Tassie more than a year ago. And since then, I've just met so many people who are in various ways involved in medicinal marijuana. Most of them, sadly, because they have a relative, a child, a parent, in some cases, a brother, sister, husband, wife, who have a condition, and there are many of them, that seem to benefit from the use of medicinal marijuana. One of them was Lyn Cleaver. In fact, the first was Lyn Cleaver. And, look, she's been a massive campaigner on behalf of her son, Jeremy, whom I was speaking about just prior to the news there. So where are we going to get to go and see the Helen Kapelos movie? Okay, whereabouts can we see it? It's called A Life of Its Own, the truth about medical marijuana. Lyn Cleaver's on the line. G'day, Lyn. How are you going?
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm very well. How impressive is Helen?
She's amazing, isn't she? Extremely passionate. And when we met with Helen in Hobart, Jeremy had a couple of seizures while she was there, and she helped care for him, and very passionate and compassionate.
It is taking on a life of its own, this story, isn't it? I'm a little surprised, to be honest, that many of the state governments and indeed the federal government are now looking at it seriously. I mean, arguably not fast enough and arguably not in exactly the ways that people such as yourself would prefer. But the idea that we can actually have this conversation, Lyn, 10 years ago, it would have been virtually impossible to have a public discussion about this topic.
Yeah. Well, 10 years ago, people thought cannabis was something that hippies did, out the back fence kind of thing. And I think now there's more appreciation to the fact that cannabis has therapeutic potential, and the conversation is really heartening.
Well, you feature in the film, don't you? She spoke to you for the doco?
No, we just met with Helen, yeah.
Okay.
But there are there's some terrific patient testimonials from across Australia, some dear friends of mine. It's extremely moving.
Okay. Now, the part of the push at the moment is for some kind of medicinal cannabis register, which I think is an ultimately sensible idea. The pollies are reluctant to do it for a couple of reasons. Mostly their personal convictions on these issues, and also the extent to which they see it as a slippery slope leading to full legalisation, decriminalisation of marijuana that they're not prepared to entertain at the moment. So, there's a couple of issues there. There's also... some of the background stuff here in terms of the amount of big pharmaceutical money going into the anti-medicinal marijuana campaign is a little bit disturbing, but you perfectly understand why they're doing that. If just talk about your story particularly, Lyn, how many different types of medication was Jeremy on to try and prevent his seizures or deal with various aspects of his seizures when we were first discharged from hospital after he was diagnosed with encephalitis, we were in hospital for 40 days, and he came out of hospital on 4 different anticonvulsants, all at therapeutic range. So, I mean, it was a rather, we went headlong into pharmaceuticals, and over the years we tried every suitable pharmaceutical for Jeremy, bar one which came with a side effect of potential blindness, so we refused that. Fabulous, yeah, great. Okay, yeah. And now that he's using medicinal cannabis, how many of those prescribed medicines is he using?
He takes one anticonvulsant at a dose that you would probably give to a 2-year-old. He's only on 75 milligrams twice a day. So, and for Jeremy, the toxicity from the pharmaceuticals was the issue. You mentioned the bone density issues.
Yeah.
He had suffered from drug-induced psychosis, from weight gain, weight loss. It was just a never-ending list of really serious side effects without controlling his seizures.
Yeah, because that's the point. You can sort of understand that I don't know, is there an acceptable level of side effect, one just you have to deal with? Well, in some cases, yeah, but the presupposition there is that the drug's actually is efficacious, that it's doing the job that it's meant to do in terms of, in this case, controlling the seizures. So the side effects are awful and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, really. You want to see your loved ones' condition alleviated, but if the side effects are worse than the condition they're trying to treat, you have to seriously think about, what steps you take in order to alleviate those symptoms.
Yeah, and I guess that's the apples and oranges comparison that people in your situation do too, don't you? I mean, for you it's a no-brainer. For the politicians and the pharmaceutical companies, it's a little bit more complicated for them. Okay.
Well, I think, Brian, the issue is, we've heard, specialists within Australia, like Ingrid Sheffer is a world-renowned epilepsy specialist, and she quite often says we don't know the dangers of cannabis, but they do know the dangers of drugs like steroids, for example, yet they still prescribe them, so, and the potential for harm from cannabis is minuscule compared to many of these drugs. All
right. Now, let's get to the tin tacks here. There is a screening planned of a life of its own. Whereabouts? When is it? And how can people get there, Lyn? Because there's a process here, isn't there? We need a certain amount of ticket sales for the thing to go ahead in the first place.
Yes, we have to have 60 tickets reserved before the screening will be confirmed.
Right. So 60 tickets. Okay. And when is the screening?
The screening is November 9 at 6:30 p.m. and we're very thankful for Village Cinemas for allowing us to try and get this up and running there. So the process is...
Which cinema is that, Lyn? Which one?
Village Cinema.
Whereabouts?
In Launceston.
Oh, in Launceston? Okay, great.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so the platform is demand.film. So, and you would jump online. Hopefully, you guys might put a link up. You jump online.
Yeah, no, we will. We've got the link, Lyn, and I'm happy to put that through when we post this and this interview and Helen's interview online later today. We'll put a link through for that so people can click there and actually buy tickets for that screening.
That's right.
Okay, terrific. So November 9, 6:30 p.m, Village Cinemas, the movie A Life of Its Own, the truth about medical marijuana, produced by the aforementioned Helen Kapelos. Well, Lyn, how many tickets have we sold so far, or have you sold so far?
We need 18 more to go before the screening is confirmed.
18 more.
Been pretty good so far.
Okay, so with relatively limited publicity, I know Fairzy and the Brecky Show on LAFM have been terrific, Fairzy and Jules. So, okay, 42 tickets have gone, you've got 18 left, and once we've got that 18 gone, the screening will absolutely go ahead and presumably we can then go sell more. What's the capacity, by the way? How many?
I couldn't tell you.
Don't know? Okay.
Double check on that.
Okie dokie. And the cost, Lyn, I guess, is critical too. How much?
$20 per ticket. So it's not a lot of money to spend. And we've actually had some people that have very generously donated a couple of tickets too. So if
I'll
want to go who need to.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get along to that, Lyn. Just
that'd be great.
I'll see how my calendar's looking pretty ordinary at the moment, but I'll try. I'll do my best. Lyn, thanks for your passion. Keep arguing, keep fighting the good fight. But tell me, what's the next thing you want our state government to do? What's the plea from here?
To start listening to the people who need this, Brian. As it stands, they're not making themselves available to the patients in Tasmania. And as recently, the Greens tried to put up some form of protection. We need that. People are being charged, and they are being brought before the court. So that has got to change. They're patients, not criminals.
Okay, have you issued a formal invitation to the Health Minister, Michael Ferguson, to come along to the screening? You have, okay.
Yes, to both Mr Ferguson and Mr Hodgman, so we're extremely hopeful that they'll come along and see the documentary. Yeah,
look, it's probably a good idea. I mean, you can take fairly dry appraisals and recommendations from bureaucrats and advisors and all sorts of things, but to actually get out and see the people involved and see it firsthand is another thing entirely. Lyn, I appreciate your time today. Thanks. We'll give it another push as we get closer to time. Come back to me, Lyn, once we've hit that 60 and it's absolutely going ahead. Give me a call back and we'll have another chat.
Will do.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Lyn. Lyn Cleaver, who is she's one of the drivers behind the legalisation of medicinal marijuana. Not marijuana for smoking. No, sitting there. No, not that. Medicines. You might have seen a story last night where people were being treated with a tincture. They're rubbing it on their skin. There's no active ingredient at all, but it's a marijuana product. It comes as a gel. And hugely beneficial for them. I just can't remember the condition.
For My Pathway, for all your employment training and recruitment needs, another Tasmania Talks podcast.